Hey, Garrett, Chad here. Can you hear me all right?
Hey, y'all. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfect.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Looks like you're in a different spot today. And in case I miss it later, thanks for coming to the meeting.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we just end the meeting for all, and I'm like, oh, where's Garrett? I didn't get a chance to say goodbye.
Whatever. They always this guy out.
Yeah.
Told them, and also. Because have.
Dawn.
You know, maybe he's transitioning. Is that for me?
It is for you. I'm going to pass it around here. Let's see how they can do it. This is difficult. You can pass that on. Ooh, good work. Oh my gosh, it's 6.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. It's 6 o'clock and I'm going to order the Gerhardt Planning Commission April 9th. We have no visitors here today, so they don't need to turn off their cell phone. Before we get into the meeting, John Nesberg has resigned from the Planning Commission effective Tuesday. His reason for it was he said he couldn't make the meetings in person, and he had thought when he applied to Falkland that he'd be able to make it to more meetings in person. So if you've seen on the city blog, they are taking applications. Okay, so that's how. Otherwise, 6 commissioners are here, Chad's here, Angelina's here, and Garrett's here. Okay, we have a consent agenda, the minutes from February 12th, that we do have a slightly edited version and a financial report from March 26th. We have no correspondence. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented? I so move. Eric moves.
Second.
And Emerson seconds. Before we vote, I do have a question about it, and it's just a curiosity question. I was noting that hers is like 50% more or more than you were planning on having spent at this point. Is there?
No, I think that's just how we allocate the funds.
Okay.
Not necessarily evenly distributed every time for various reasons.
Okay.
But there was a 9% increase coming our way.
Okay. I just noticed that budget's 9,000 and spent 14. I'm going, oh, goodness gracious. But that's just the way it's.
Yeah. We're on track to make our budget, but it's tight.
Okay.
On the whole budget, not just that particular.
Right. Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Thank you. Reports. First from the staff. Jack, do you have anything to share with us today?
No, nothing big. Working on a lot of things with the public safety facilities and in that situation for the May 19th election. And here to answer any questions that you might have about that. I'm working with council a lot on the budget right at the moment and working through that situation. We've got a few code enforcement issues that we've been dealing with, but not too heavy. The ordinances have been fairly light. That's one of our code enforcement issues is somebody who cut down some trees without a permit. So we're actually finding them and going through that process. Post office, nothing more to report from the city. We haven't really heard anything over the last week. Some fun facts, since 2015, USPS has changed their policy to no longer do home delivery. So all new neighborhoods in the United States that come in are getting cluster boxes rather than home delivery. So we're under that kind of situation here. Although we're not losing anybody that's currently getting home delivery, we're not going to be gaining anybody. So cluster boxes or somebody running that post office are our two options. So we're still waiting for some information from USPS on that. Odds and ends, doing some utility work around town, looking at doing a water main extension on the Hillella Lane, working with that, still having some things dealing with some floods and flooding that's in there, but that's kind of moving forward. There's a lot of things, but nothing more that I think I need to update you folks on at the moment, unless you have some questions for me.
Yeah, I wondered on the new fire. Are we gonna have open houses and that kind of stuff for that vote, or? I mean,
The council did a coffee with council, last weekend.
heard about that.
And they had some people that attended that. They're gonna do more of those.
Okay.
We're not gonna do any major town halls, on that. We're just gonna continue the communication through, the lines as we have. So no, probably not any major.
And what about any drawings or renderings of what it will be?
Some of those are coming out. We've just completed our FAQ and some of the drawings are on the website now. Now there's only in very basic preliminary drawings because we did not spend many thousands of dollars to get final drawings, nor could we afford to. Those cost a lot of money. But we've got preliminary work. We know about what we want to do and we know about how much it's going to cost. Once the bond goes through, then we get into the final design,
Okay.
the finished design, and we'll have more of those renderings. But it's not gonna look any different than what it does now. We're not making any changes to that building. That's not in the budget. We're not changing the facade. We'll paint it. We're looking at, making a connection from the roof into the walls to give a few more seconds in case of a shaker, but it's not going to be a resilient building. The only way to make that a resilient building is to go down 60 feet. And that is just too cost prohibitive and it would destroy the building. And you saw what that budget looked like at 32 to 35 million.
Right.
So it's going to look a lot the same. You know, one of the ideas is to take, currently there's a water shop back there right now where our public works has their shop. We'd like to get them out of there and replace their shop. And that's part of this project so that the fire department can take over that back part of the building. So from the outside, it's really not going to change at all. It's going to just kind of reallocate some space. That's one of the main reasons that we're looking at the Palmberg shop, Palmberg Paving Company shop across from the grade school at 1175. It's a good old building that will function as a fire station first while we're remodeling this if the bond goes through. And then we'll move the fire station back into the remodeled fire station and put public works over there. Public works, I can put temporary housing. You know,
Well, so it's everything's in the back of that property, not the front, not the specific wave side.
correct. So the idea right now is to, I mean, that building is almost, all we would have to do is change the locks. We've been through that building quite a few times with some experts and it's in really good shape.
Okay.
So we would just change the locks and do a few things to make it work as a functioning fire station for a little while. And then move back into it. And then once the public works is in it, the idea is to not put anything in the front yard, to leave it as is.
But that would be purchased along with the back building.
Yeah, everything from Pacific Way to the back storage building that now houses all the RVs.
Yeah.
That would be ours if this goes through the way that we hope it, the way that it might. And we would use that partially open storage for storing a lot of equipment and things that we have outside currently. And so we would use it as is, basically.
Great.
Any other questions? Don?
What's the asking price for that property?
I think 1,060,000, I think is where we ended up. I've got the agreement, I've been through there.
So close to one.
Yeah, just barely over 1 mil. Yeah.
Any other questions for Jeff? No? Okay. Garrett, do you have anything to report?
No, my only updates are kind of incorporated into the other material that I'll go over with you here shortly.
Okay, Angelina, do you have anything to report? All right. Commissioners, do you have anything to report? Yes, Eric.
I only see that Tom Feast is in the waiting.
Oh, that's because he's listening.
I
Is
think
he, have you not let him in?
That just went away.
See that he wants to come in.
He had been on the screen and said he was in the waiting.
Maybe he was,
Okay, I'll text him.
I get a funny name up here. Okay.
Other than that,
Other than that, that's it. Probably doesn't need to be in minutes, but, do we have any visitors, Angelina? Okay, no visitors, so no comments. Okay, so we have no public hearings. We have no unfinished business. New business, housekeeping code updates. Is that you,
Correct.
Garrett?
Yeah, that's me. And this is just a verbal, I don't have any other material or presentation to share, but so, this is just an update that, over the last few years since I've been working for Gearhart, I've been keeping a bit of an inventory of issues, unclear language, language in the code where we have trouble interpreting it, this sort of spreadsheet inventory. And so we're cleaning this up and going through it as staff and considering if there's some updates that we want to do and how they align, how sort of different buckets of these might align um, with other city goals, like budget constraints and the need to save time and money, for example, is one that we're looking at. And so Chad and Angelina and I are going through and kind of considering some of these examples, and we're going to outline a process to work with you on probably doing some updates to the Gearhart zoning ordinance. And, we want the process to be relatively predictable, manageable. There might be, like a series of chunks of updates that we work on together, and then package into an actual ordinance and hearing update at the end. And so it's just to let you know that it's something we're working on, and I think in the next couple of months we'll be back with you with some work to do on this. We do have a few applications coming in with hearings for May and June, and so those will be a priority to do those on time, but that's something that's coming up. So that's it on that one.
Any questions for Garrett? Okay. Moving on, we have information discussions, Oregon housing land use law updates. Is that you again, Garrett?
Yeah, this is also me. Angelina, if you can enable me to share my screen, I have a uninspiring PowerPoint presentation to use.
Should be good to go, Mr. Garrett.
Should be good.
Let's see here, one moment. I'm clicking the button. It's not enabled yet.
Would the IT people please get that?
And I don't need it.
This guy.
It's okay.
They're working on it.
Okay. All right, well, I'll get started. So over the last several years, the state of Oregon has adopted a number of statutes that affect how land use laws are supposed to work in situations where new housing is being created. And for the most part, this really hasn't affected the decisions that have come before you or the work that staff do together with you. It's come up a couple of times, and I'll note those items, but increasingly going forward, and especially I expect in the next couple of months, some of these housing laws that have been adopted in the last several years by the state are going to be like front and center in the decisions you're making. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of an update and briefing on those and a reintroduction to them, perhaps an introduction for the first time. And looks like I can share my screen now.
Yeah, I accidentally gave it to Tom Tees.
Okay, so these are all these are housing laws that affect situations where we're making a permit decision where new housing would be created within the urban growth boundary. And the idea with, sort of a broad themes across these state housing laws are to limit local discretion and sort of subjective judgment in decision making, speeding up the decisions and providing more certainty to applicants. So there's three main areas of change I'll go over. Affordable housing, I think, is not going to affect us, or I don't see that affecting us in the near term, but clear and objective standards, mandatory adjustments, and limited land use decisions are going to be coming up as topics. Things that I'll be noting in staff reports, noting in verbal presentations as we're working our way through hearings, or the code updates that I noted before. So for clear and objective standards, the state housing law says that when we're reviewing an application for residential development within the urban growth boundary, the standards that we use have to be clear and objective. And so this hasn't really come up in any decisions that you've made on individual applications, mostly because at least since I've been here since about 2023 working for the city of Gearhart, we haven't had any subdivisions or partitions come before you. And there's very few situations where residential development is a conditional use. And variances also, we've had a couple of residential variance situations, but none where it was to create new housing. So it just hasn't come up for us. Sorry, one moment. So it has come up when we were working on the PICM, the floodplain PICM standards, and it came up also when we were working on the tree ordinance, where we modified our recommended ordinance updates to make sure that they wouldn't run afoul of clear and objective standards. So that's the only place that this has come up so far in our work together. You'll see it coming up soon in a subdivision application that I think we're getting, a partition application, and potentially in the future with conditional use permits. For example, for residential development in a commercial zone is where that could happen, or perhaps a manufactured dwelling park in the R2 zone. But basically, even though we might have some standards that are not clear and objective in our code, staff can just take the statute and implement it directly. And so that's going to be the case for us. We have standards in our subdivision code that are not clear and objective, and we're going to have to essentially ignore those standards when we're making a decision on a residential partition. So, yeah, this is some of the material I just went over, but here's a few examples. So if you could imagine a residential application for a conditional use in a commercial zone or a manufactured dwelling park in the R2 zone coming in, it's a conditional use, and you read the criteria for a conditional use permit, we will basically have to ignore all of these criteria. And the staff report would include a proposed finding that's identical for all 7 of these criteria. And staff's recommended finding will be something like, this standard is not clear and objective, therefore it is not being considered as part of this decision. And the words that I've bolded are sort of like the red flags that give you a hint that the standard is not clear and objective. So it's just an example. of where this could come up in a conditional use permit decision. For subdivisions and partitions, we have standards that give the planning commission a fair amount of discretion to decide whether a proposed subdivision or partition is appropriate. For example, that, one of the criteria that you consider is whether the land is suitable for the subdivision, given various local conditions. That's not specific enough to be okay under the state law. So we would have to ignore that standard. Again, like the word appropriate in the next one at the lower left. And then finally, this is also going to come up in decisions related to exactions and dedications, where if, we can require an applicant to build half of a street if the code says specifically that they have to do that. But if there's a standard that says that the city manager or the planning commission may require something like that, that basically means it's not required. And you may not require it, actually, under clear and objective standards statute at the state level. So I guess before I move on to the next topic of mandatory adjustments, while this one's fresh, do you all want to talk about clear and objective standards at all?
Yeah, I had a question.
Russ.
Oh,
So they know who's talking, Russ.
yeah, this is Russ here. So is it possible for us to deny anything? Given the way you're presenting this, it sounds like it's Wild West for the applicant.
Yeah, so under the current Gerhardt zoning ordinance, we're really limited to the basic, like, objective, oftentimes quantitative standards. So if a partition applicant comes in with a partition application to divide their land, and it's already zoned for residential uses, and their proposed lots meet the minimum lot size requirement and the minimum lot width requirement, and some other, objective standards, we basically have to approve it. So in some ways, it really diminishes the planning commission's discretion and role in determining whether whether residential development is appropriate. That being said, it is just about residential development. It's just about residential development when new units will be created. And one thing that's notable is that, local communities can sort of reassert their authority by essentially making more kinds of development not permitted, where you say this is just not permitted. That's clear and objective. And you can say it's not permitted, and then provide a discretionary track, a discretionary process that basically gives yourself that authority back. And it requires a code update where you're making that explicit, that says, basically under the clear and objective standard statutes, we're saying this is not allowed, or that there's a objectively sort of diminished set of situations when this is allowed. But we could be flexible if you go through this discretionary process with the planning commission. So
One more question, Greg. So you spoke about a road that we can't, if we haven't specifically outlined a road ordinance or specificity. Can fire hall say we need a road of standard X to get the fire truck down this street? Or are we not allowed to even do that?
Yeah, so even when it comes to fire safety and things like that, I mean, I would say with safety, you probably, if there's like good reason, that might be like the one area where there could be some more leeway in a LUBA appeal. For a city to impose a discretionary requirement based on the expert opinion of the fire chief. But even there, like we're really supposed to only require things that are based in the Oregon Fire Code. And the Oregon Fire Code has a lot of, pretty clear objective standards about like what kinds of turnarounds are required, flow requirements, things of that nature. It's definitely a new dynamic, even in a city like Warrenton, much larger than Gearhart. They've been subject to these state laws for the same amount of time as you, and they get way more applications. And it's still like a learning process in terms of working with public works and fire staff when we get their opinions on a development. And, the planner has to say, wait, like we really need to get your opinion rooted down into like a referenced code section of the Oregon Fire Code. Like we can't take, comments that aren't rooted that way in a law. So
Okay.
Any other questions from Garrett? Okay, move along.
Okay. All right. Mandatory adjustments. So mandatory adjustments are essentially like variances, but without the variance process. Again, this is about new housing within UGBs. If someone comes in and says, I would like to apply for an SB 1537 mandatory adjustment, and I need it because it will make my housing project feasible, we basically need to say, okay. And that's a staff level type 1 decision. It's basically not appealable. And it's like an automatic 10% variance to setbacks, height, lot dimensions, a few other things related to that, up to a 100% parking reduction. And we just got to do it. So, if someone wants an 11% change to the required setback, that is a variance, that is a planning commission decision. But if they just want a 10% reduction in setbacks, that's like a staff level decision. And we'll just write basically like a 1 to 2 page memo outlining that we issued that. And that's the end of it. So that's SB 1537 mandatory adjustments. This is one that sunsets in 2032, and the state has actually explicitly recommended that local communities not adopt this into their code because they don't anticipate it being permanent after that. So this hasn't come up in Gearhart. Nobody's asked for one. But we're supposed to make it available and not like hide the opportunity either. If someone is trying to build housing in our community and they have like an issue with accomplishing what they want to accomplish, we're supposed to let them know about this opportunity and process it accordingly. So, any questions about that one?
So, yeah, you heard us all groan with 100% parking reduction or whatever it was there. Does that mean they don't have to have parking?
Yes.
So you can build a house and you can park on the street,
Yes.
on our narrow, skinny streets. Is there,
Well,
okay.
yeah. So the city can have parking regulations that prohibit parking anywhere that city council decides. But we're not allowed to require them to provide off-street parking.
Okay, and this is only for residential, it's not for like a multiplex or
It would be
hotel?
for, that's right, yeah, only for residential, but it would apply to multifamily residential, but not hotels.
Okay. My question. Other questions?
I'm boggled. I'm wondering which inmates are in charge of the asylums.
And this one hasn't come up with us, like nobody's asked for one yet, you know?
But how long has it been on the books?
I think that we were, like, if someone had asked as of,
24.
yeah, it was adopted in 24, but it wasn't effective immediately. I don't know exactly when it came into effect, when we like had to have been responsive to this if someone asked for one. But again, it's only for when like someone's applying for new housing, where like a new dwelling unit or more than that would be produced as a result of it.
Okay, because as I understand it's the setbacks in Gerhart have to do with the septic systems, and is that correct? They have to be wider on one side than on the other side?
Yeah, it's generally like a 5 foot on one side and a 9 foot on
Right.
the other side. Yeah.
And you could reasonably take that and reduce both sides some. You're 10%, right?
Yes. Yeah, so it could be 8 feet, you know,
And an inch.
8 feet 1 inches or 2 inches. Yeah.
And that would be if it was needed to actually put a single family dwelling there. If it could still be accomplished with a single family dwelling and keep the setbacks, I think we would be all right. I'm not sure, maybe Garrett could play that one out, but yeah, 9 on one side for sure.
Yeah.
To get a tractor back there for for septic. 5 on the other is also dictated by fire code, so there's not a lot of room that we could make with that. We can't break fire codes to make something work, but when it's appropriate. I mean,
I don't think, yeah, I don't think this is one, we'll see, like, this is one where we would apply like our persuasion and education, you know, skills to try to get them to not go ahead with asking for a reduction of the 9 foot, you know. It makes sense to have that space, right? Like they would want to have it for septic maintenance in the future, you know. Like,
Questions, Don?
Yeah, you said this applies to only new construction. What if you buy a property and then raise the house that's there and then build a new house? Are they then allowed to wiggle within this, in this scenario?
yeah, I think so. I mean, we could explore whether that's an exclusion, but there's not like a mechanism, and I don't think it's discussed in the statute, that you can document that a house was there within a certain amount of time prior to the new permit that's being applied for, and take that into consideration in denying the adjustment request.
Okay, any other questions? All right, moving
Okay.
on.
Okay, the last one is limited land use decisions. So our code already for some time has been like a little bit out of whack with limited land use decisions statute, but SB 1537 also expanded the number of decision types that are considered limited land use decisions. That now includes replats, property line adjustments. It already included partitions, subdivisions, and non-conforming use determinations. So limited land use decisions are basically decisions where a type 2 staff decision is supported by statute. A type 2 decision is not something that's like described at all in our zoning ordinance, but it's basically like the decisions you make on partitions and conditional uses, but staff are making them instead without a hearing. They include a public notice. They include an opportunity for people to comment in writing. They include a staff report, and the staff report gets published as a decision, and there's an appeal period. And if someone appeals a limited land use decision, it then goes to you actually, and you would hear the appeal. And then your appeal decision could be appealed and heard by city council, and so on to LUBA. So this is not one where we are supposed to change anything that we're doing. I mean, I think the statute, as much as possible, like they want these decisions to get devolved down to the staff level, to try to speed things up. But we don't have to make any changes. Right now, our code says that partitions and subdivisions, for example, are planning commission decisions, and we can continue to make them that way. And we will, unless we discuss it with you first and come to some agreement about it. But, you know, going back to the clear and objective standards discussion that we started with, increasingly, at least when it comes to residential development, your decision authority is less meaningful with residential development than it used to be. And so on some level, it's like, well, we might as well do residential partitions at the staff level. That could be an argument someone would make. Right now, I'm just presenting you information and not proposing anything. So this is basically all to say that under the limited land use decisions section of SB 1537, the city has the authority to devolve partitions and subdivisions, for example, down to staff level decisions. And that could be just for residential development, for example. This one doesn't sunset, but it also doesn't like mandate that we do anything. And this one's going to be quick. This hasn't come up in Gearhart yet, but if someone proposes an affordable housing development, that meets certain criteria, it will afford them a fair amount of leeway when it comes to where they're allowed to do that and what kind of decision process they're subjected to. So land that's zoned commercial, land that's zoned for public use. For example, if someone proposed affordable housing development there, they would have to be allowed to do that without a zone change, actually. And there's some other aspects to that one too, but hasn't come up yet in Gearhart. So, so again, just to sum up, we're applying all of this as just like applying the statute directly without code amendments, except for the limited land use decisions. Again, we're still bringing partitions and subdivisions to you. Most of this hasn't come up much in our discussions. Mandatory adjustments haven't come up at all. Clear and objective standards only came up in the context of code amendments, where we wanted to make them consistent with the statute. And we have some opportunity to at least have a discussion about limited land use decisions and how we want to make those in the context of residential development going forward. That's it.
Garrett, there's an equation to figure out what affordable housing is, and I've been told it once and I was kind of shocked by it. What is that a formula?
So there's different formulas depending on the context and the statute and the funding source, but for SB 1537's provisions on affordable housing and it being allowed in commercial and public zones, I actually don't know that off the top of my head. I can try to pull it up here, but it'll take me a moment.
Okay, I know another, to our neighbor to the south, I believe theirs was 40% of the median income made it affordable housing. I believe that was the equation that was used, but I don't know if.
Yeah,
it
that's
varies
common
from place to
terminology.
place.
Where it's like, it's housing that's affordable to someone making 40% of area median income or 50% of area median income. And it would actually be interesting. I could bring back some figures on what the different thresholds are and what it means in terms of an actual home price, right? Because we were stating that in terms of a home that's affordable to someone making 40% of area median income. But what is the actual home price that equates to? I don't know. I can't tell you right now.
Are there questions for Garrett, Don?
Garrett, the last one you talked about limited land use decisions. Is this, for example, applicable to, let's say, someone who owns like the grade school property and wanted to build affordable housing there? Would they not then need a zone change?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to comment on it in terms of a specific scenario that could come before you. But yeah, like the public semi-public zone came to mind as I was reading the statute and DLCD's summary of this. Yes. Similarly, the conditional use provision about a caretaker's home in that zone, I don't know about that with clear and objective standards either, to be honest with you.
Anyone else have questions for Garrett? Okay, Garrett, we've heard your spiel and seen your totally blown PowerPoint presentation. Anything else?
No, that's it. I mean, in May, we'll have a meeting in May. It looks like we're gonna have at least a partition hearing. And then I think we might have a subdivision, but that would probably be in June, if anything, and we might have a conditional use in June as well. So look forward to working with you some more on those.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have any concerns of the commission? Yes.
I saw a property in town that had laid out chalk lines for a new driveway and new paths. Looks like they're gonna be paving. And it immediately made me think of our recent impermeable surfaces requirements. And I don't know if people have to apply for something. I don't know who the owner of the house is. I just noticed it and wondered if there's something that's supposed to be happening there, or that they just pour their driveway and people.
If they're in the floodplain, then they're supposed to get a floodplain development permit to do that.
So is this something that as a citizen, I would report this to you guys and you would check it out? Is that how that works? Okay,
We do that often.
thank you.
Okay, any other concerns? We don't have any questions for land use attorney, because we don't have one here. It is 6:43. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.
Bye, Garrett.
Thank you.
That's
Bye.
okay to end it.